Okay. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Good morning, everyone. Today, well, actually, Ms. Huerta, if you'd call roll first.
So Mayor Paulette Guajardo.
Present.
Council members Roland Barrera.
Here.
Gil Hernandez.
Here.
Michael Hunter.
Here.
Billy Lerma is absent. John Martinez.
Here.
Ben Molina.
Present.
Mike Pesley. Greg Smith.
Here.
City Manager Peter Zanoni.
Present.
City Attorney Miles Risley.
Here.
Mayor and Council, a quorum of the council and the required charter officers are present to conduct the meeting.
Rebecca, I hate to ask, but is your microphone on?
Yes. I don't know
Can't
if it's
hear you
low.
very well at all.
Oh, probably because I have my mask on, maybe. I don't know, but I
Yeah.
can ask them to raise
Okay.
it. Thanks, Mayor.
It may be the mask. Okay, thank you. Okay, so today we are here to discuss our capital budget and gas,
That's correct, Mayor.
correct?
Yes, yep. So the Jeff Edmonds is going to begin going over two things. One, our 3-year and then 7-year for combined 10-year capital improvement program for all aspects of our city. And then he'll also touch on his operating department. As we know, engineering services helps to manage the implementation of bond program projects, also projects in our water, wastewater, airport, and other facilities in the city. And then following his presentation, of course, there'll be questions from the council, and then we'll proceed after those to our gas operations. And that presentation will be given by Bill Mahaffey. So with that, I'll turn it over to Jeff Edmonds.
Thank you.
Good morning, Mayor, Council members.
Good morning.
Jeff Edmonds, Director of Engineering Services. I'd like to start off with a little apology. I think we had this thing structured where I would be batting cleanup behind Public Works and Utilities, and as events overtook us, now I'm leadoff batter.
Hear you that well. Now I'm the one.
Okay,
it's
and I
usually
can't blame a
Councilman, but
mask.
I can't hear today.
Okay, I'll try and get a little bit
Much better.
closer.
Thank
Okay.
you. Okay.
Okay, I'll get closer to that thing. Okay, so I'm going to go through a recap of what's in the CIP, the Capital Improvements Plan, and that is really the main driver for what we do in engineering services. Then I'm going to talk a little bit about our operating budget and take questions. So, am I able to drive? Okay, this slide is a summary of what is in the CIP. The funding sources are on the left and the uses are on the right. By far the largest funding source is revenue bonds. The second largest is general obligation bonds. Of course, a significant portion of the GEO bond program is dedicated to the street reconstruction program. Since that requires almost an equivalent amount of revenue bond expenditure to replace obsolete utility and drainage infrastructure in the street reconstruction corridors, that's also a significant driver on the revenue bond side. So the uses are, the sources are on the left and the uses are on the right. And of course, those columns equal each other. And interestingly, the top 4 rows on the right side comprise 2 departments, Utilities and Public Works. And they account for about 75% of our throughput. And that's part of the reason we thought it was a good idea to follow Utilities and Public Works with this presentation. This next slide is just the same information presented in a graphical format. You have the sources and the rings on the outside, and the slices, pie slices, and the inside are the uses. Okay, now there's a lot of attention on the GEO bonds, even though that's not the largest funding source. That is probably the one with the greatest visibility, since those have to be passed by a referendum. So we pay some special attention to where we are on these projects. So as you recall, the Bond 2020 program overwhelmingly passed by a historic margin, and We want to keep that momentum going and retain the public's trust in our ability to deliver on these projects. As you can see, those older programs are nearing 100% expended. There's a plan in the early spring, I think Constance mentioned it, that we would be trying to close out these older programs and repurpose any of those funds that remain. That's early next year. We're planning on bringing that forward to council.
Excuse me, Mr. Edmonds, we have a question.
Okay.
Councilman Hernandez?
Yeah, Jeff, you have the funding here listed, but do you have the completion for percentage for each one of these? Like, I'm assuming all of Bond 08 is complete, right?
There's still, for example, Park Road 22 Bridge is under construction, which was an '08 project. This is by, not numbers of projects.
It's just, this is just the funding, right?
This is the
just
funding,
money.
exactly. This is
So-
expensed and encumbered.
I guess what I was asking is that, if you could give us an update on, how much is left on each one of these in terms of projects as well.
Okay, I don't have that offhand. All projects are not created equal. You have, on some of those programs, for example, there's been sort of catch-all projects. You'd have something like community parks, $4 million. Well, that might mean, from my standpoint, there might be half a dozen projects that are billed under that heading, and it's listed as one project in the bond program.
Right, I believe 2018 had a lot of
2018
projects.
has a big problem on that. Like if you go to the facilities propositions in there, like public safety, for example, it lists all the fire stations. I think there were 15, 16 fire stations that were listed for improvements there, but it's listed as one project. So it's a bit of a semantic question of what actually constitutes a project.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought Park Road 22 was from 2004.
You might be correct on that. You might be correct. I'm not sure what we have active in there, but we're going to bring that to you early next year, and we're going to have to do this as scrub. There's some things that get on the bond program, and then you can't get started on them. There's also things like, for example, developer participation, which really Development Services has control over. And
Yeah, but this is specifically just the bond
well,
projects.
those things are on the bond, is what I'm saying. So they would show in here as unencumbered funds.
Really? Okay.
There's other things like TxDOT participation and things like that that have been, in some cases, held out, and they haven't needed the full use of that money.
Then we probably need better understanding of how what's all left.
Right, yeah, and Mayor and Council, so today at the council meeting, we're going to hand out the third quarter financial report. We're required to present council with quarterly updates as part of our city council approved financial policies. So in this packet, there's a section just on the capital improvements.
Right.
And that'll get you all active projects for all these bond programs. Which ones
So are we using the program now, the, I guess, I forget, the new program that we're using?
Is that new program functioning, the software?
It is functioning. I'm going to say, about halfway through the rollout on that. We are bringing on all the Bond 20 programs. They're going to go cradle to grave inside of that program. The front-end processes are fully deployed, and this month we're planning on deploying the back-end processes, the construction side processes, but it is a major undertaking to transition.
Okay, is that where you have the $666,000?
That's correct. That was a
is that
5-year
correct?
agreement that was approved by council back in April of last year. And
It's an interesting amount, 666,000.
I didn't pick it.
All right.
And then Mayor and Council, Jeff spoke of it.
Not. Do not
Well, it's
say no.
posted, it's listed as
Yes,
666,000.
don't say it.
All right, thank you.
Can I just add one comment?
Yeah.
So, Mayor and Council, we can, looking at the slide that's on the screen right now, the goal this fall will be to close out the 08, 12, 14, and even the 16s if we can. So after we're done the budget and we progress past October 1, Jeff, Finance, Engineering, City Manager's Office, and Finance will work together to close out those old bond programs, the 08, 12, 14, and even the 16. And as we mentioned in several council meetings, we'll bring any balances and a recommendation on how that can be allocated to the council. So all we want to be working on is the 18 and the 20, and then we'll be working with council soon on the 2022 bond program, the proposed one. So that's our goal, and that will happen this fall.
And we're
Thank you.
including this graphic in that quarterly report, and we're hoping what you can see quarter over quarter, you'll see these bars start to go up. And there's been some significant activity on Bond 20. We've gotten all of those projects have initiated design activity, so that bar is going to take a good jump up in the next reporting cycle.
Okay. Thank you. We have a question, Councilman Pusley.
So Jeff, explain to me what expense and encumbered means.
Expensed and encumbered means that's money you've already spent, paid out, plus what you've encumbered. So when you enter into a contract, we encumber the money. So it might not actually be work that's in place in the ground, but you've committed those funds.
Well, that's my question. So if each one of these blue areas that you show here, just because it's under the expense and encumbered, because you can encumber the funds whenever you go to engineering or to some engineering company to have a project designed. That doesn't mean the project has been completed.
Correct.
So I guess my question is a little along the lines of Councilman Hernandez. What is this, what we hear from the public is all the time, how come you don't finish one bond project before you, pass another one? So what I'm trying to get my head around is, of these bond projects, what portion of them have been completed? That expense and encumbered is just an accounting. Is that correct? Or
That's correct. I think it is a good way to indicate our progress towards completion of the program. But I've gotten that observation many times, and what I would say to that is that if you look at what we do in engineering, it's like an assembly line. And, ideas for projects go in on one end and completed projects come off the other end. Now, the length of that assembly line is 3 to 5 years,
Right.
some cases even longer than that.
correct?
Okay, now, if we would do what you're suggesting, hey, we can't do another bond program until we've completed everything, that would be like not putting any raw material on the front end.
Please excuse me. I'm not suggesting that we run our business like that. What I'm just trying to be able to do is say, okay, when someone asks me, okay, on bond 08, which was worth $156 million, is to be able to look them in the eye and say, well, 75% of those projects are completed, done.
Yeah,
Not-
Councilman,
Yes.
can I add to
Not
that?
just encumbered.
Yeah, Councilman, so maybe we should have handed out this report already, but in the report that we're going to hand out at the council meeting today,
Okay.
yeah, there's, like on page 25, the 2020 bond program shows 90% in pre-design, 10% are in design. And I don't want to read this to you, but like 2018, 39% are under construction, 33% complete, and so on. So
Okay,
we're
okay.
going to hand that out to you. You'll see
Okay,
it.
all right.
Yeah,
That's
I think
good.
that's what you're asking for.
Okay, thank you,
Yes,
Jeff.
sir. Okay.
That's what I'm looking for.
And also, just to remind the council, with the 2020 bond program, we have a completely new business process, which is that for all the streets, 22 street projects, we did a mass selection process. We recommended the engineering firm, and city council approved that. So right now, 75% of all the street projects are in design.
Good.
That's a record setting.
Yeah.
That's not what we normally do.
And that is to note, Peter, which is what you're
Right.
saying, is that is what a big part of what makes it all move forward faster.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
Because, yeah.
And by contrast, some of the 2018 projects just came to council for design contract awards. So we're changing the business process so we can get these bond programs executed much faster.
Yeah.
With
And
council's
that's what I'm
agreement.
trying to understand is, when you say something, when the funds have been encumbered for a project, that just means,
Right.
you've
means
got
you've
a
entered into
project
a
and it's going to
contract.
cost, proposed to be X and, but anyway, thank you, Jeff. I appreciate the answer.
Okay, now I'm going to recap a little bit of what's in the CIP. The water CIP was $111.9 million. Some of the significant projects in there are the improvements at Choke Canyon and Wesley Seal dams. There's improvements to the Mary Rhodes pipeline and pump station improvements. We have some major improvements and upgrades at Owen Stevens Water Treatment Plant, and there's an increased emphasis on distribution system repair and replacement. And of course, a big element is the street bond project support, where the water fund pays the cost of the replacement of water lines that are within the construction limits on the street bond projects. Okay, the street CIP, of course, we've got the Bond 20 that was just passed, the Prop A, and then the Bond 18, Prop A and B were streets propositions. We have the residential street rebuild program and the street preventive maintenance program, and then miscellaneous traffic signal, street lighting, ADA improvements. And the total on that street CIP is $84.2 million. The wastewater CIP, a major element of that is improvements to the 6 wastewater treatment plants. You may recall that back around 2014 timeframe, we were looking at needing to invest a significant amount of money into the 6 treatment plants. And the concept was floated about building a single wastewater treatment plant and abandoning those 6, and that was extensively studied in 2016. And in mid-2017, council directed staff to proceed with the series of improvements that were required at all 6 of the wastewater treatment plants. And of course, that's been a major driver of the wastewater CIP ever since, and will continue to be so for probably the next few years. Another major driver is the consent decree that went into effect in January of this year. Stormwater CIP is $58.1 million, and probably the major element to that is the street project support, which is, of course, all the drainage infrastructure that goes in with the road reconstruction project. But we are now starting to get more proactive, put greater emphasis on improvements and rehabilitation to stormwater infrastructure. Okay, Parks and Recreation CIP, we've got Bond 18, Prop C, senior centers and other park improvements. On Bond 2020, Prop B was park improvements that are scattered across all the districts, and the design for the Bill Witt pool and the North Beach restroom and parking rehab. The largest item on here is probably the Packery Channel restoration, which is currently re-advertised for bids. The bids are scheduled to open on September 8th. We are continuing to get good news out of FEMA, and we're expecting that we're going to get that final approval. We're currently at step 23 of a 25-step process, and due to the size of the project, there's one more step that has to go through OMB review, which is currently happening. Okay, Marina CIP. This is a much bigger element in this CIP than it has been in past CIPs, and the major project there is the pier replacements, A, B, C, D, and L piers, and significant dredging in the boat basin. Public health and safety, we've got the Bond 2020 projects that included design for the Police Academy and Fire Station 3. There's still Bond 18 projects that are making improvements at almost all the fire stations, and fire headquarters, EOC, and also the police headquarters. There's the Type A seawall CIP is included under that heading in the book, and we've got rehabilitation of the seawall and some improvements to the breakwater, and salt flats levee is included in there. The water garden has been reprogrammed back in by the Type A board, and probably the largest project under that heading is the solid waste compost and admin facility. Airport CIP, we're continuing with a multi-year program of improving pavement on the aprons and taxiways, and we've just approved a contract to replace the passenger boarding bridges, and we've got some other facility improvements that are programmed for this year. Gas CIP, $10.3 million. It's got gas line and transmission main upgrade and replacement, cathodic protection upgrades, and I'm followed by Bill Mahaffey. He's probably going to speak in some more detail about the CIP during his presentation. Public facilities, we've got citywide library improvements, and we've still got some outstanding Bond 18 work at Health Department, Science Museum, and we've been making a lot of improvements here at City Hall. If you've tried to go upstairs, you've probably noticed we've got a project underway for the elevators, and there's improvements at American Bank Center.
Mr. Edmonds, we have a question.
Yes, sir.
Councilman Hernandez?
And this is your last slide, right?
No, I'm going to talk about my operating budget, but only 3 slides on that.
Well, since we're still talking about CIP, I wanted to ask you a question on something that was added to the CIP called an engineering admin reimbursement expense that are on most of the pages now, where they hadn't been in the past. But I wanted to understand that fee. What is that, like a straight fee percentage-wise of the overall project? What is that?
Yeah, can I hold that question, and let's talk about that when I'm doing my budget, because we're going to talk about that a little bit.
Okay, during your operation? Okay.
Yes.
I'll hold on.
Next few slides.
Mr. Smith?
Thanks. Jeff, just before the marina, you talked about the Packery Channel on there, and you just kind of slid over it a little bit. So I want to, this is a big issue that we've worked on a long time. So can you say one more time with the Packery?
Well, so this has been kind of a saga. So, FEMA came in here right immediately after Hurricane Harvey. And, of course, everybody knew we had this damage. This was not, this was the largest feature of damage that we experienced after Hurricane Harvey. And we went right out there with FEMA. We started the documentation process with them. We were having regular meetings with them for over 2 years until we were approaching final review with FEMA, and someone flagged it and said, FEMA shouldn't be doing this. This should be under Corps of Engineers authority because of this thing called Public Law 8499, and they basically have a policy that if any other federal agency has authority over something, then it shouldn't be funded through FEMA public assistance. Well, that started us on a year-long spinning our wheels with the Corps of Engineers, trying to get them to fund it until they finally issued a denial letter, which was actually a great thing for us. When they denied the eligibility for core funding, that flipped it back to FEMA PA. So the last few months, we've been racing through through that process, and we're expecting to get project worksheet approval.
So we're just about to hit the finish line, hopefully. That's the bottom line, right? So,
We believe so.
and we're going for 2 grants. Has one been approved?
One has been approved for the sidewalk
how
and
much
the
is that?
surface improvements. That was roughly $5 million.
Okay, so we've got that, and is it 10 million is the second?
This would be the second one for the revetment repair.
And a 25-step project, we're at step 23, 24.
That's correct.
Yeah, step 23 is where we're at, Councilman, according to Tammy Embry yesterday.
Okay. I think this is really big news.
Yeah.
On there that, I know the city manager has been pushing this, and, you know, and this week we'll hit the 4-year mark when that damage took place.
Well, and I'd like to give a shout out to Tammy and the legislative folks behind the scenes have really been pushing this.
Well,
So
and
there's been a lot of work done
Yeah.
to keep this thing moving.
And I know our senators and Congressman Cloud, Cornyn, and Cruz, their staffs work hard on it. So thank you, Jeff.
Okay, now I'm going to switch gears, talk about my operating budget, which is kind of not very exciting compared to the CIP. But our mission is to cost-effectively manage the execution of the city's capital construction project portfolio. These are some statistics. We typically have 50 to 60 active construction projects at any point in time. Typical monthly throughput is 12 to 15 million dollars, and our average project size is about $6 million. So in the interest of time, I thought I was going to be trying to get under the wire at the last workshop. I tried to compress 3 or 4 slides into one. So I will take your question now. So engineering is funded by charges to projects. So that you see is really a budgeting exercise. So according to finance, we can't do it with an allocation. So we actually keep time records. And the system that you mentioned, ultimately, is also going to be our timekeeping system as well. But we allocate our costs to projects based on actual time charges that our employees incur. We average in that 6% range, 6% of project cost, total project cost. And about 2/3 of that is on the construction side, 1/3 of that is on the design management side, upstream side. I think that compares very favorably with peer organizations like U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, Naval Facilities Engineering Command. Both of those charge 5.7% for what they call MILCON projects, which MILCON is greater than $6 million project. So that's a little bit larger projects than ours. Their cost is a little bit lower, 5.7, as opposed to, I think ours would be about 6.2 to compare it, but our average project size is lower, and you could probably argue there's a lot of things that we do that they don't necessarily do. So on this slide that I've tried to compress all of the information.
Jeff, can I ask you on that?
Yes, sir.
If it's 6%, roughly 6.12% or something along those lines, there's really no consistency on what you're charging or what's your budgeted charge. Like, for example, what kind of drew me to it was actually on the design for Bill Witt. It was $1 million that we budgeted for it, but you have $100,000 for engineering admin fees, which is 10%. And this is only on the design, so I'm assuming it should be less on the design. And then I decided to say, well, let me look at some of the other projects. So I went to the street projects and looked at some of the street projects, and it was somewhat inconsistent as well. Airport Road is 9.8%. Alameda Street from Texan Trail to Chamberlain is 5.5%. From Bronner Parkway, 8.5%. Beach Avenue, 4.5%. Air Street, 2.7%. Beach Access Road didn't have it yet, so it was 10% there. So I just wanted to, is it going to be, just for budgeting purposes, it should be kind of consistent, right, at 6%?
So I'm probably going to have to call in a lifeline from Camille on how they arrive at that. The main thing that we try to do is be sure that there's an adequate amount budgeted in there to cover that, because that's a legitimate part of the cost. And if you don't,
Okay, I mean, I don't think that's a problem. I think just for budgeting, it has to be consistent.
So what Jeff is stating is his costs. You also have costs for my division, finance, contracts and procurement. Each of those gets an allocation of
Okay,
our time.
I get that, but I mean, if you're gonna have like an allocation that is consistent with a project cost, based on the size, it should be kind of consistent percentage-wise if you're just looking at it from a budgeting standpoint, right?
We try to.
You shouldn't have variation from 2% to 12%.
So if you look at the streets ones, the admin there is only for the bond portion. The cost of the admin for the utilities is combined in the utility costs. So the water, wastewater, stormwater that is broken out, that cost of the administrative that is charged to utilities is in their particular number. We didn't break that out. The only admin that is broken out there is for the cost of the bond admin. And then you have the cost of the utilities, water, wastewater, stormwater, gas. That cost is all combined. Construction, design, and admin is combined into that one number in there. So that's why streets is a little bit thing. It should be consistent around 10%, which is 6%, 6 to 7% on Jeff's side, and then 3% on the admin side. So 6.5, 0.5% for contracts and procurement, 3% for budget and finance.
Okay, so what you're saying is that for every project we have 10% administration costs right
Yes.
off the bat.
Yes. That's just a budgeting.
Internal administration.
Yes, it's just a budgeting tool. It can be more, it can be less. Again, it's a lot of Jeff's, it's based on time cards. So if
Okay.
it comes in lower, we think, but this is just for budgeting purposes.
So why would you treat utility bonds differently than general obligation bonds? I mean, through the projects.
It's not that we treat it differently, it's just to avoid 17 lines of saying admin for water, admin for engineering, admin for wastewater, admin for thing. We just combine it into a combined number for the utilities as a support number.
So why don't you just combine that into the engineering administration reimbursement?
Could you repeat that?
If you're doing engineering reimbursement for just like for example, just the general obligation, and there's multiple sources, right? There's type B funds, there's certificates of obligation. Are you treating those differently?
Yes, in most of the street projects is general obligation. It's very few have other funding sources. There's one project for type B, which is Elizabeth Street in the proposed budget, and one project that has grants, which is Junior Beck. Most of the remaining street projects are funding through Bond 2020 and Bond 2018, and few of the little projects of Park Road 22. And
Well, do you see the how it can be confusing?
yes, I do, and we can
Okay,
can
so-
work on that to clarify that, and we can break it out more. And so we try to keep it as not to have 17 lines, but we can break it out a little bit or combine it. As I say, it's a work in progress, and every year we're trying to adjust to, what the council is looking for and what is expected. So we went from not having a budget or one-liner. So we're trying to build on it and trying to expand the budget to make it more transparent and easier to read.
Okay, well, you still need a lot more work there on
Yes.
that. Okay, and so last question I have here, because I know this has been brought up by our friends in the blue T-shirts over there about the funding scheduled for the desal plant under the water and how it's planned out for several years out in advance. Peter, can you give a reason for that?
Let me find it in the book here real quick, Councilman. Was,
I can take a stab at that.
yeah, what's the project name?
It's E15117. So the normal cash flow that we have is that, you know, when you start a project, you have sort of preliminary engineering, conceptual design, and then you go into detailed design, and then you go into construction. So it appears that we are trying to project the cash flow on the implementation of that project.
I mean, it's not a project that has been agreed to or to move forward from this council, so we're kind of programming it into a budget tool that we're going to be voting on to approve. Is that normal?
Well, normally, what you're approving is the year one expenditure, but getting through that gate doesn't guarantee that you get to the finish line with any project. So I would say that the $15.8 million is what's being approved with the CIP.
Well, that's what I'm saying, is it hasn't been approved by this council for next year. So are we programming it on the anticipation that we are going to approve it and spend that $15 million?
Well, when council votes on the CIP, it's then approved.
Okay,
Councilman, council did approve the utilization of the loan of that first 11 to 12 million dollars. Mr. Murphy showed it last week in his presentation. The breakout, it was for right-of-way acquisition pending permit approval.
I believe that was $11 million, right?
Right, yeah, 11 power purchase agreements.
But this is 15 million.
Right, yeah, this includes additional funds, I guess, from the loan. You guys.
So if I may, the approval of the capital budget is a guide. It's a planning guide. You do not actually approve a contract or anything until it comes to you as a body. So any of these projects, we can have a budget of anything we want, but any contract has to come to this body to do anything and be approved.
So this, but I mean, this schedule is kind of based on the Freeze and Nichols estimation from their report, right?
Right, and this is, as Councilman Smith and others have talked about, we've talked about it, we need to beat that number. That's the highest end. We're going to come in hopefully below that. But we do need to explain, if you can, Kevin, I don't know if you can, the 15.8 really should only be 11 point something. That's the only loan amount we've been approved for.
Right,
Sure.
yes, sir.
Yeah.
So like the city manager said, it is $11.4 million. That was what was approved for the first tranche. And, you know, simply put, it's just, you know, it's going in with an assumptions because this is a plan. It's a budget plan. And, you know, it's with assumption that we're moving forward, decisions made with the location, and that we move forward, we complete all the permitting and maybe get a little bit ahead. And then we start pulling off of that second tranche there that's available.
Okay, so, I mean, but we're kind of treating this differently from like the North Beach project, right? Because we don't have any future program funding for that other than what was assigned through the American Rescue Plan.
Right, but this funding is available to us if we take the second tranche of the loan.
Okay, but then we're talking $11.4 million, not 15. Where's the addition?
Right, but again, it's a budget plan, and so we're planning to, you know, just to put it in the budget,
I'm with
to have
you.
it available.
I'm just saying we're treating two different projects differently.
Okay.
Okay, I'm not complaining about what you're saying here. I'm saying that the projects, you know, we have an engineering assessment for DSAL, we have an engineering assessment for North Beach, but they're not programmed similarly. Does that make sense?
So as Kevin said, we have been approved for the entire loan amount, that over 200 million. So that,
Well, yeah,
we've been
but
approved.
we also we're also planning for 101 million in 2022 and
Right.
105 million in 2023. I'm sorry, 23 and 24,
24, right.
respectively. So we don't have any funding planning like that for North Beach.
Because we haven't been approved. So like I said earlier.
Well, this hadn't been approved either.
We have been approved for the loan, yes.
We
Yeah,
wanted to
Texas
show the
Water
full
Development
amount, sir.
Board approved, we've been approved by we're one of 8 applicants.
Okay, but,
of
but
90
what I'm
that-
trying to say is neither of these projects have been approved by council.
Right, that's correct. So this is, as Camille said, this is a planning tool. The only year that's being approved is the 2022 year. The other 3, in fact, none of them are really approved until you come to council and appropriate with a contract of sorts. So this is a planning guide. We can take them out if you'd like, but this tries to give you a picture of what it could like based on, what it could look like based on council's current dialogue.
Okay, just from the perspective of, for me looking at it,
Yeah.
When you approve a capital improvement plan, this is the plan you're approving, right? Which
Right.
includes this money. We can change our mind down the road, but right now it's not an approved, we haven't moved forward as a council to say this is the
Right.
direction we're going. We
That's
still have,
understandable. I mean, we could take it out if you'd like. We could just show the first year, 11.4 million, and then have nothing in 22 and 23. That's a choice. We can do that.
Does anybody, I'd like to, yes, Councilman, Barrera, or is your light on?
No, I'm sorry, go
Oh,
ahead.
I'm sorry, I thought you were gonna say.
Well, I was making a statement, because he asked a question. I believe it's more transparent to leave it on. That's my opinion.
Well, leaving it on is basically saying this is the intent, until you actually appropriate, nothing happens.
That's correct. That's correct, Mayor.
Councilman Smith? Oh,
so I'm just saying that means, it kind of also means we have no intent to do anything on North Beach either, beyond whatever was this year.
No, we have the 5 million programmed in the North Beach, but that's the only authorized
right.
funding
Right.
source. The difference here is this loan was approved. So we issued the loan application, we were approved, we were awarded the first 11 million. When we're ready, the rest is available. Council just needs to approve that loan.
Councilman Smith has a
Yeah.
question.
Thanks. I know we talked about this fairly extensively in our last budget workshop, but there is a little bit of a hole. We've got $15 million. We've approved, this body has approved 11 point something million dollars. Yeah. And I think to be consistent with that, that's probably the better number.
Yeah,
than
I
the
agree,
15.
Councilman. Yeah, we probably need just the 11.4 in 2022.
Because that's what this body has approved. And we've also discussed the 200 and, the overall, it's been well discussed. Now, compared to North Beach, there's no alternate financing that we're aware of at North Beach. So I can fully understand why North Beach isn't in there, because you don't have a SWIFT funding or any kind of like type for this.
Well, we're
$100
making
million
some assumptions here as well for all the projects in terms of funding.
And
it's a planning tool, right?
It-
We
it's
do
a-
have a cost estimation based on an engineering report
Yeah.
on a specific project that isn't included in here. Now, I'm not, whether we had different options for that particular project. Now, it's not my district, but I'm using it as an example of the differences between how this is planned for desal and how it's planned for a different project.
Well, we've got very specific differences. One, we have an approved financing source, and the other we don't. And we have to remember in the budget, we're talking about estimates. So, we can't go down to the dollar or this kind of stuff with it too. That we're working with an estimates. It's on the engineering until they get the hard amounts. They are just estimates. So it's shooting at the dartboard. Hopefully we got good dart players with it, but they are estimates. So to be staff, okay, we need to know to the penny. We don't know to the penny. We won't know to the penny until months or years later, until we get the actual cost. So we spend a lot of time on an estimate where we ought to be more focused on cost. That's my 1 out of 9 opinion.
Councilman Pusley? Turned it on.
Yeah, I understand the planning part of it. I guess I was, I'm trying to learn y'all's budget process, so please excuse me if I stumble once in a while. But the monies that you're showing from the loan that was approved in the budget, that has caused a lot of confusion. All of us have had many emails and phone calls and whatnot about, well, you guys are budgeting to spend $200 million, and we haven't voted to do that yet. So I'm trying to figure out why we're even carrying that on the ledger. And I understand the part about being transparent, but the transparency came forward when you guys applied for the loan and were approved for it. That was put on the books at that time, that that money was available to us. But as far as my research goes, we've only encumbered $11.4 million of that loan to spend for engineering and permits and whatnot, and I didn't understand the 15 million either. So why are we doing it that way? And then the second part of my question is, Jeff, for the capital improvement budgets, again, I'm trying to understand your process here. Some of the monies that are included in this CIP budget were monies that were approved by bonds in years past, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So we're carrying that forward in the budget under the capital budget?
Correct. Whenever we have, for example, a bond program, Bond 18, that's going to be in execution for
A
5,
number
6
of years.
plus
yeah,
years.
whatever,
Correct.
X period of time. So the $420 million capital budget that Peter presented to us here a week ago, or whenever it was, we have so many of these meetings, they begin to run together. But how is that compared to the $448.9 million that you show for the fiscal year 2022 CIP budget? Are those monies the same monies, or are they different?
Maybe I'll answer that one.
Good.
The 448 includes operating funds. So, for example, you have $24 million, $12 million on the street side for the street preventive maintenance program, $12 million for the residential street program. To not double up that money on that slide, to give you a picture of, those numbers do not include operating or transfers. So you have actuals things. So the difference of the 20-something million dollars, just operating money that's been mentioned in the previous numbers from the general fund, special revenue, and debt.
So they don't include the intergovernmental transfer?
Yes, and yes, or operating funds that are already budgeted on the operating side. So there's that variance between those two numbers.
Okay.
But the actual.
That is the same money.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
So we're not actually, well, we may or may not, I'm trying to understand this $420 million in the capital budget.
So the $420 million is original money that is not booked somewhere else.
Right.
So you get a true picture of the $1.2 billion budget. So it's $1.2 billion, not counting things 3 times.
And we may not spend that $420 million.
We might not. I mean, it's a plan. On the CAP, as just said, it's an execution. If everything goes smoothly and every project goes as planned, yes, we could get to that number, but that does not mean that that happens.
You
So
could
the-
think of that as more of a ceiling than a floor. And we typically put through my department $150 to $180 million. And back on the seawater desal, it's a good illustration. They're assuming the way that we've got it drafted out here, by year 3, you could be fully spent out on this. I think
Sure.
that's probably very optimistic.
Right. Yeah, I think that's probably true. So I guess the generalization that I would make is the $1.2 billion that we're budgeting this year is just a budget number. It doesn't mean we're actually going to spend $1.2 billion.
The goal is to put that into production, that amount. We may not get to that exact amount, but that.
Well, I mean, yeah,
Right.
you're going to put that into production, and that's through
Right,
bond projects and whatever else you're doing here.
right. Payroll.
But it doesn't mean that we'll, at the end of the day, because so is that $220 million you're carrying in the budget for the desal project, is that reflected in that 1.2 billion?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, 15 million of it is.
15 million,
Right.
which
It should be 11.4.
should be 11.4.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
only, yeah, just that smaller portion.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much. I'll be quiet.
Well, getting back to, this was my last slide, and like I said, I could, I compressed about 3 or 4 slides on here. You got kind of the org chart and the positions summaries. This is how the positions break out between the 3 divisions we have. We have what we call the project management division, which does the management of the design process, and then of course construction management, and then the support service division handles financial, HR, administrative functions all across the entire project life cycle. But it splits out about 1/3 of our cost is on the upstream part and 2/3 on the downstream part. And that was my last slide.
Okay,
If there's no further questions, I'm going to let Mr. Mahaffey have the podium.
thank you.
Good morning, Mayor, council members. Bill Mahaffey, Director of Gas Operations. I'm here to present our 2022 proposed budget. Next slide. Or do I need to push it? Yeah. Our mission is to deliver natural gas to natural gas customers. It's a pretty easy mission, but there's a lot to it. And next slide. So this kind of gives you all an idea of how large our gas system is. We're the 2nd largest municipally owned gas system in the state of Texas. We have over 1,500 miles of main, and then 55 or around 56,000 active gas customers. Now we have about 63,000 gas meters within that. Just to kind of clarify on that, we sell about 3.5 million cubic feet a year of natural gas. A cubic foot or an MCF is the unit that we sell gas the gas at, and 1 MCF is 1,000 cubic foot. 1 MCF is also around 1 million MMBTU. So that's a million BTUs. Just to kind of clarify on that. Next slide. Here's our organization. We have 5 divisions. We have our construction division, which does all our in-house construction projects. I think a lot of y'all know that we're pretty much self-sufficient on the construction side. We've probably done 3 major pipeline projects since I've been at the gas department with outside contractors, and those are bores across the Laguna Madre or the Ship Channel, or bigger projects than our crews can handle. And the construction division does a lot of that in-house work, and they do a great job at that. Our next department is our maintenance and operations. Those are the guys that are responding to leaks. They're coming to your house at night to help with service issues, and they're 24/7, so they're always available to help out the customers. The next division is pressure and measurement. They're handling our reg stations, pressure issues, pretty much everything that involves the transmission of gas on the distribution side and the large volume meters. And then we have our Petroleum Department. And that department is also our damage prevention department. That's where our line locators are housed. So we do all the line locates for the city of Corpus Christi. That includes water, wastewater, stormwater, and gas. And so most of those FTEs are focused on that mission. And then we also inspect all the oil and gas wells in the city. And that is also in that department as well. And then our finance superintendent and her department that helps with our administration. Next slide. So for 2021, here's a list of our achievements. And we always like to put achievement number one is a very good annual audit. We get audited annually. Normally it's in June by the Railroad Commission. It's a fully comprehensive audit. They audit all our programs. They're usually there for a couple of weeks with 4, 5, or 6 inspectors. It's a pretty intensive process. And this year we did really well on the audit. The next achievement is, of course, the completion of all our gas line replacements. The street improvement projects are tough to keep to manage because we got to work with those contractors, and so it's quite an achievement for us to stay on top of that. And I think engineering, normally we get very little complaints from engineering on holding up projects. So I'm very proud of my guys to keep that reputation. And then our third achievement is the completion of gas mains for all new subdivisions with in-house crews. So in 2021, we did 8 subdivisions at 33,000 feet of main. Now that doesn't include some of the main extensions we've done, and some of these projects overlap years, so we try not to take double credit for them. So, it might have been 10 projects that we really completed, but we maybe took credit for them last year. So it kind of fluctuates. And then our fourth achievement that I know the mayor has been out to the Naval Air Station to discuss this with us, but we were awarded the DAG state grant to replace all the natural gas system at the Naval Air Station. We actually just started that project last week, and it'll be a 3-year project. I think it's around $3 million. And maybe it's supposed to be a 4-year project, but I'm hoping they get it done in 3 years. And so that'll be a neat project, and we're happy to be able to help them with their gas system. Next slide. So here's our performance measures. On the linear feet of gas main, we're steadily increasing on the amount of gas mains we install every year. I'm hoping that FY23, that number increases significantly, especially after we hire some more people, more crews to help with our replacement program. And then our response to service turn-ons increased from 89 to 90%, which is excellent in my opinion. It's really hard to get to 100% on that. And then our number of new taps, you can see that we're steadily increasing on that as well. So our gas business is booming. And then our total volume of gas sold, that number is kind of deceptive. It really fluctuates with the weather. It's really about getting more customers and then getting more residential customers and then getting larger commercial customers. And that's one thing that we're trying to improve on with our rebate programs and with our marketing program to the industrial customers and assisting them with their projects. And we do have a few big industrial projects that are planned for next year. So I'm hoping that the commercial side will increase as well. Next slide. So we kind of already talked about these services, so I won't go over that with y'all again. We didn't talk really about our natural gas safety programs, but with COVID, it's been really hard to get out to the public, but we're hoping that at some point we can get out there and market our safety program more. But we do try to reach out. We've been doing a lot of on-site meetings with excavators. Excavation damage is one of our biggest threats to the system. That's where we get the majority of our gas leaks. It's almost 80%. So we're always out meeting with contractors, or we provide safe digging courses for those contractors, and we're constantly managing them. Next slide. Next slide. So our budget from 2021 to 2022 has increased by $6 million. I'm sure all of y'all are aware of what happened this year with the gas payment. And $3.5 million of that $6 million is that payment for the $35 million or give or take that we borrowed to pay that gas bill off. And then the other portion is, well, we can go to the next slide. Well, I was trying to get to the decision package slides. Let's see what that is. This is just showing our overall budget. But next slide. So yeah, so out of that 6 million, the other 2.5 million are these enhancements. Now, a lot of these, the majority of the expenses are 1 year, and then the rest of it is ongoing. So it's probably about a third of this are ongoing expenses because, for instance, on this enhancement 1, we're adding 7 positions to support meter replacement programs. So a large portion of that enhancement is for the vehicles and equipment that those guys need to get started and get those crews going. And the 7 positions, you know, they'll probably make up around 200,000 of that, 250,000. Next slide. And then we're also adding 8 positions to support our infrastructure replacement program. This is all our construction crews. We're trying to get more construction crews. We've increased the amount of taps that we do every year. So we've gone from 1 tap crew to 2 tap crews just to keep up, which has pulled some crews from our line replacement program. So we're trying to get more employees to offset those losses. Next slide. And then, of course, this is the big chunk of the $2.5 million overage, and it's for modernizing our fleet. Now we're kind of on year 3 of catch-up year on our fleet. This is kind of our last big push. When I came in, I think this was 4 years ago, I noticed that the gas department really hadn't been upgrading their fleet for 5, 6+ years. We had equipment that was 12 years old. So we've made big pushes over the years when we could to upgrade that fleet, and this is the last big push. So I'm hoping that next year we'll still continue to try to replace our vehicles, but it'll be more of a smaller amount every year on a consistent basis. Next slide. And I'm available for any questions.
Councilman Hernandez?
Thank you. I just noticed you had actually pretty well put together budget. I appreciate it. I appreciate the reduction in your expenses on professional services. You went down from the amended budget of $1.2 million to $335,000 for plan for this year. So I'm appreciative of that. So I just wanted to point that out. On the negative side, I noticed in one area you have 10% overtime budgeted for your oil and gas well division, which is significantly higher than your other divisions. Is there a specific reason for?
Yes. Actually, I'm going to comment on your first observation. That reduction in professional services. In the past, all our rebate program, that's where we budgeted our rebate program. And I didn't think that was very transparent, so we actually budgeted that into its own account. So those, and that's not all of it. We did reduce professional services a little bit, but there was 600,000 of that was going through to those rebates. So we transferred those over. So I just wanted to let you know how that went through. On the so the Petroleum Department is our where our line locators are, and our line locates have just skyrocketed. I mean, we do. I think I'm going to throw a number out here, and I think we did about over 100,000 locates last year. So, I mean, it is just every day, there's just tons of line locates that these guys have to get to. Now, that department is also, you know, water, wastewater, and stormwater do pitch into that. They support us in that department as well. But what happens
Well,
in,
Bill,
on
the
that?
reason I asked that is that your actual salaries went down from $530,000 to $487,000 for that department, but your overtime stayed consistent from the previous year. So,
Yeah, I'll have to check on why we might have moved a employee or a position, and that's why that budget amount went down. I know we haven't reduced any on our line locators, but I'll have to check into why that I wasn't aware that it went down on the operating budget. But we do get what I was going to go to is we get a lot of overtime in that department because it just depends on the year and what's going on, and so we don't staff that 24/7. So those employees are on call, and then they get called out, you know, pretty often, but not frequent enough to have a 24/7 crew. They get called out at night, and then that's when some of the overtime kicks in. So I think that's why we were making sure we had enough in the overtime budget to cover that.
okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Councilman Pusley.
On your discussion about marketing, there's new subdivisions going up all over the place here in Corpus Christi. What are y'all doing? And I know we've kind of discussed this before about what you're doing to try to expand the number of connections we get at some of these new properties.
Yeah, so we pipe 100% of the subdivisions. I mean, if there's a subdivision that comes through development services, we're putting gas in it. We're reaching out to the developers at, during that time to let them know about the rebate program. We're also very involved with the Home Builders Association here, and they've started to do more of their meetings, their monthly meetings. We actually went to the last meeting, and I think that the last time I presented about the rebate program, the numbers that I gave y'all were incorrect. I think I showed that we were getting 75% of the taps. I actually need to relook at that because, I think D.R. Horton, which used to be Brazelton, I had them at only getting 50% of their homes. And at the builders meeting, I talked to one of the main guys with D.R. Horton and was kind of giving him a little trouble about getting more gas homes. And he looked at me and said, I don't know what you're talking about. We do 100% of our homes are gas. So those numbers need to be re-looked at because we were comparing building permits with gas taps. And I think there's some discrepancy on that information. So we may be even more like 85 to maybe even close to 90% on that. Because every builder in that room, was kind of telling me they're 100% in. But we'll get better at tracking that information. But that's our main point. That's our main avenue to reach those builders is the Home Builders Association. And Moses, he's a big fan of the gas department as well, and he's piping a lot of gas homes as well.
Okay. So your total volume sold is, if you take over the last 3 years, is probably around 3,200 MCF a year.
Around 3.5 million.
So is the gas department, and maybe this is a better question for Peter, is the gas department ever a revenue generator for the city?
Eddie, I don't believe so. Do we get any transfer from the gas department? No.
Well, y'all do.
We do?
Yeah.
General
Yeah.
fund, yeah. Can you come? Yeah. The answer is yes. We do a little bit from our other utilities. I don't know the exact amount.
It's right there. I don't know. I think that
We do transfer from the, I mean, there's a couple different kinds of transfers. One of them is for the general fund support, different departments like HR, finance. And then in addition to that, about 5 years ago, we started transferring about 4.4 million in total from all the utilities. I think gas is 500,000 or 600,000 of that. I need to go back and make sure, but the total from all the utilities is 4.4 million.
I think Hernandez might have read it.
Yeah.
700, that sounds familiar.
What is budgeted for 2022 for a transfer out to the general fund is $710,018 for
That may be some indirect.
operating, and then you have another transfer to the general fund for administrative service charges of 1.12
Yeah, it's-
million. And these are all increases from the previous year. Previous year from the operating transfers was $557,000, and for the administrative service charges of
Yeah,
$923,817.
the 1.2 million is for the general fund support, and the 700,000 is the gases portion of the 4.4 million.
So those are funds you're transferring back over to cover the charges that they're assessing against Bill's department from the other departments.
Right.
Is that correct?
That's correct, like legal
Okay.
services.
So it's really not excess revenue?
No.
When I say
700,000
revenue,
is-
I mean, you've got $500,000 that you're not utilizing, that has not been programmed, that is not going to be transferred over to cover some intergovernmental transfer or whatever. It's just revenue generated to the city. So my question is, if that's the case, why are we in the mode of trying to enlarge our gas department?
What do you mean by enlarge the gas
Well, I
department?
mean,
Councilman?
he's out trying to make connections to all the homes.
Right, we're trying to offer to new subdivisions gas service
Okay.
as an option.
So it's just a service
Right.
industry at this point.
Right, some builders don't want gas service at the home. We bring it down the street. And then some builders don't want to spend the dollars to.
No, I understand that.
I
Peter.
actually have a pretty good
Okay,
answer
go ahead,
on this. When I started in 2009, it was a year after Debbie, my predecessor, started the Builder Rebate Program. And before she started that program, the gas taps were on a decline. I think that in 2008, they only had, 120 gas taps. So, I mean, the thing to think about, to consider is the gas, having a gas utility is not, it's
Not meant to be a revenue generator.
well, and you don't have to get a gas tap when you build a home. That it's not a necessity. You
Right.
need water, you need sewer, you need electricity, but gas is something that could be left out. And I think that if we're not, I don't know who said it, but if we're not growing, we're going to be dying.
No,
And I
I
think that's why
understand.
we want
Yeah.
to consistently
I'm
push
just thinking
that.
of this in terms of,
Yeah.
whether or not we're actually generating revenue that's going back to the general fund for the
Yeah.
city of Corpus
We
Christi.
do a little bit, as we talked about.
Yeah.
The key, some background history is the gas service used to be a private sector venture.
Right.
Until they went bankrupt, and then the city took it over.
Yeah.
But we don't have a big profit margin, so our gas rates are of the lowest in the state. Our
Yeah.
customers have the second lowest or the lowest.
Yeah, so at 2 MCF, we're at, well, no, now you're calling me out. I'm trying to think. It's either the lowest or the second lowest
Right.
in the state.
And we have real favorable rates for our customers in Corpus Christi because it's a municipally run
Okay.
operation. And if it was a private sector, I would venture to say there's going to be a markup of 10 to 30%, right? So we have one of the best, or if not the best, rates
No, I
in
agree
the
with
state.
that.
Right.
I concur with that.
And then the growing or the adding more taps is to give that customer buying that home that choice and kind of quality of life. Some people like gas.
Which helps hold our
Right.
rates down.
So
Right.
one thing to consider too is now that we do have the new gas residential rate, in the past, the rebate program, when I was looking at it from the financial side, I always kind of do like a return on investment on that. It didn't make sense because at as efficient as the homes were, they were only using 1 MCF or less. the return on investment on the builder rebate program and the cost that it takes to get the meter to the home, it was almost 20 years.
Right.
And now it's within or a little bit below that 10-year time frame. So that change that we made is helps the builder program survive, in my opinion.
Okay, last question. Of all these industries on the port out here, how many do we sell gas to directly from the city of Corpus Christi?
Ooh. I would have to look, but I'd imagine that we're at, I would be safe to say that we're at a third to half of them.
Right.
Now, the port is not in our, I guess our
they're not
service areas,
considered.
so they're not required to get service from us.
Right.
But, I mean, we go above and beyond. When they call and they're asking for a meter, sometimes it's a lot easier for them to get it from us than to get it somewhere else. And we usually do it quickly and, with very little cost to them to install those main extensions and everything.
Okay.
We just had a new customer come on board this year, Epic Crude. They just came on board with us. They're a pretty big customer.
Okay. Thank you very much.
No problem.
I have a question, Bill.
Yes, sir.
You just made a comment a little while ago, excuse me, about the necessities in homes. You said electricity, water, and sewage.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's our problem, why we can't grow our industry as far as gas, because gas should be a necessity. I've heard from many residents that are buying new homes that they didn't have the option when they bought their home to put gas in. They didn't know about it. So how are we going to market the gas department better to these new individuals that are buying homes on new subdivisions? I understand that you said that the home builders are working with us. I get that. But they don't promote the gas department to these residents because it's extra work.
Well,
Okay? So how can we resolve that? How can we push and market your product better? Because to me, gas is a necessity. And I
Yes.
think we need to look at it that way, that we're with the top three also. Gas should be a necessity. It's an option, but it should be a necessity. And I think this past winter storm, a lot of people found that out. I think this is a perfect opportunity that you can use in your department to push connections for gas because of that winter storm.
yeah.
I myself was able to stay warm. All I had to do is plug it in a generator and my furnace ran with no problem.
Yeah.
Others did not. They had electricity, so they couldn't get any kind of warmth.
Yeah, and we have a very good service track record. I think
Yeah.
I don't want to say that we're the most reliable utility, but I maybe could say that.
I mean, I just want to know how
But
can
yeah,
we get it out there to the customer?
I hear that on the new homes, and occasionally, I mean, please email me these homes that y'all.
I mean, I just want to know how do we reach that public with,
Yeah.
with the ones that are buying the
You-
homes is what
you
I'm saying.
have to-
Because the developer's
Yeah.
not going to push it for you is what I'm saying. If
So-
we're dependent on the developer, that's not going to work.
Well, so we have to kind of depend on the builder because the cost to install it after the house is built is a lot higher than before it's built. And so during that construction phase, to kind of answer your question, is our greatest opportunity to get gas in that home. And that's why we need to, we are focused on the builders, but we also do offer to customers that are installing gas in an existing home the same rebates that we offer the builders as well. And we're looking at changing that program a little bit to make it more affordable for them because it is a higher cost to add
Yes, sir.
to the existing
Well, that's what
home.
I'm saying, that, because most of the homes that are being built now, they're bought before they're even built.
Yeah.
So,
And the
but
majority
my
of-
question to you is, how do you reach that individual saying, hey, let me give you your option about electricity and gas before it starts getting built? I already bought the land, the house is going to get built. How do you get that list to where your department can go out
That's-
and try to sell the product?
That's where we're banging on the builders' doors. We're at the meetings. We're giving those builders the rebates. And we have some good builders in our program.
Yeah.
And they are very loyal to the gas department. I mean, Brazelton, who's now D.R. Horton, they started the program with Debbie back in the day. So they're very loyal to it.
And I think, Bill, this also takes advocacy from us to say, this is
Yeah.
very important. Please, we need your partnership, and we need you
we do.
to do, because we're not on those front lines. And really, it's difficult that you're talking about a whole nother endeavor in marketing and PR for that one thing, when you have our builders who could help us
Yeah.
better do it, because it's a good
And
point.
in our marketing program, it needs, I'm not going to say it's perfect. Our advertising is not great, and we're working on getting better advertisements. I'm always
Yeah.
jealous of Peter's advertisements. I'm like, hey, why can't we get as good ads as that? But we're working on that to try to get that message out to the homeowners as well. And we never say no. I mean, since I've been there, I've never said no to a new customer.
Right.
So if they want gas, they're gonna get gas.
Okay, thank you
Good.
very much.
Bill, thank you very much.
ma'am.
I don't think we have any other questions, and I know we need to regroup for our council meeting that's going to start here momentarily. So Peter, unless you have anything else?
No, that concludes this budget
concludes-
workshop. Our next workshop in the budget will be Thursday, Mayor.
Okay,
Yep.
great.
Thursday at
Thank
9.
you, Bill. Thank you very much. So with no further business, I adjourn the meeting.